The Contradictions of Development Aid. Development aid is a self-sustaining institution that can only exist as long as there is oppression and poverty. Without this, i.e. without the capitalist market economy, they cannot survive, which is why their first priority is to ensure that development aid is always needed. In addition, the aid forms an outlet for missionary urges, helpfulness, and feelings of superiority. They don't want to tackle the problem at the root: monopoly capital, free market forces. At first it seems noble, but they actually worsen the situation of the invitees, due to the fact that development aid does not change the situation at all. It's just like the saying, give the man a fish and he lives for a day, give the man a fishing rod and he can keep himself alive. The fish is basically the development aid and the fishing rod is the only fair system, the socialist system. It is frustrating and sanctimonious to see that Western countries are only too happy to give money to development aid, to keep up appearances for their own people and so that they can maintain the capitalist market economy for their own benefit. The developing countries only need our development aid because America and their followers do not want to give them a fair chance to build their own country. The countries receiving aid are under pressure to implement economic reforms, in which the privatization of the public sector plays an important role. Latin American countries, for example, carried out large-scale privatization after Hurricane Mitch in 1998, under pressure from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. At the same time, countries are often forced to open their markets to foreign companies, which also undermines the democratic content of the countries concerned as they are forced to implement donor policies. Until the 1970s, African countries experienced rising life expectancy, falling infant mortality and falling illiteracy. This development worsened in the 1980s when public services were cut at the insistence of the World Bank and the IMF. The non-socialist world is dominated by powerful corporations, so-called monopoly capital. Since this capital has dominated our planet, it has kept the majority of humanity in poverty. The small group of the most powerful countries, from which this capital comes, distributes profits made elsewhere among themselves. The high standard of living here rests on their misery. To increase the income of underdeveloped peoples, therefore, one must fight against imperialism. Imperialism is simply what imperia do. It is the process by which the rulers of one country appropriate the land, natural resources, labor, capital and markets of another country. This process of expropriation is usually left out of the picture. But that is the aim of all free trade agreements, breaking open the so-called developing countries. The term, developing countries, is a misleading and misnomer. Firstly, because those countries are not really developing. Second, because the term suggests that their original condition was one of total poverty, when in reality much of the poverty has been imposed by imperialism. The very last thing imperialist rulers want in their own country are well-informed, well-educated, well-fed, self-confident, well-organized citizens. The poorer and hungrier they can make you, the harder you will work for less and less money. And the last thing they want on a global scale are self-conscious, self-developing nations. That's what the empire is about, making other countries poor and hungry and weak. One of the mechanisms to achieve this is the imposition of free trade agreements. Quote of Thomas Sankara, ex-president of Burkina Faso: "Our country produces enough to feed us all. We can even produce more than we need. Unfortunately, for lack of organization, we still need to beg for food aid." This type of assistance is counterproductive, and has kept us thinking that we can only be beggars who need aid. I am asked, where is imperialism? Just look into your plates, you see imported corn, rice or millet. This is imperialism. Let's not look any further.